And I'm Dave Lawrence. Today we have a very special guest joining us. He is in town this week and got a new record out, a recent record, Careful What You Dream, Lost Songs and Rarities. But it's a collection of music that dates from we'll hear more about it. So it's a new record, but it's not a new record. Yeah. And these through Saturday at the Blue Note, it's a real thrill. Not a whole lot of artists can lay claim to making a song that when you hear it, it's kind of like aromatherapy or, and I mean it, it's the kind of thing that you put that on and whoa, you get chills. Walking in Memphis is the song I'm talking about, and the brilliant artist is Marc Cohn, and he's here right now with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You're totally welcome. And this record, it's hard to describe something like this, but I always dig it when people go through their archives, however you would describe Careful What You Dream, Lost Songs and Rarities. You'll describe it better than me, no doubt.
Yeah, it was an interesting sort of surprise record for me, too. My first record is 25 years old as of last year, which was the motivation for me to go back and try to find the original demos of the songs from that record. And I found some of them, not all of them. What I wasn't expecting to find was about 12 or 13 songs that I wrote before the tunes that ended up on the first record that turned out to be pretty good. I mean, my memory was that I really didn't find my songwriting voice until I wrote Walking in Memphis and Silver Thunderbird sometime in the mid-'80s. But the truth is there are 10 or 11 songs there that could have made, by themselves, a pretty good record. And so that's basically what I did. I thought of re-recording them, and I thought, no, I'll just release them as they were meant to be heard. They're basically demos, but they're all 30 years old. These tunes that I couldn't even remember, and now they're part of the show sometimes.
And what kind of material were they in? Were they, meaning these are on DATs, or what were the...
Exactly. They were all on DAT. It was really, I mean, it took us 4 weeks to find a functioning DAT machine. So that was the first problem. And then when we found one, there were some of the tapes that we just couldn't play back. But luckily, these were preserved.
Those are cool. That's what I used to do in my interviews way back in that same time when you were doing those. And then for folks who have not had the privilege of sitting out in the room watching you do the gig, describe these other cats that you've got with you. And for people who know this phenomenal song that has so much meaning to so many different people, and they're curious about what the show is like, kind of describe both the cats in the band and the show that you're doing.
Well, the band that I brought with me is a trio, including me. I have an amazing percussionist who spent most of the last couple of years with me and with Sting working on his Broadway show. So he's a phenomenal percussionist. So good, in fact, that I don't even have a bass player or a kit. And the other musician that I brought with me used to play with Levon Helm and Sheryl Crow, plays still with Roseanne Cash. Is an amazing organ player, keyboard player named Glenn Pacha, great singer too.
And what's the percussionist's name?
Joe Bonadio. So it's the three of us on stage, basically presenting, I hope a very a compelling show that sort of shows some of the songs in a stripped down setting, but we can also groove. So I feel like I have a lot of range with just this small group. It's fuller than playing solo, and it's not a band. It's somewhere in between, and I like it.
It's nice like that. It's a great description. It's perfect for the size, too, of where you're at. Thinking about the record, because I'm always just curious how it works these days with folks. Are people buying downloads? Are they buying the physical thing? I mean, how does it come to when it comes to people buying the album?
I don't think people buy anything anymore. That's
crazy, huh?
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, I mean, that's why everybody I know, including me, is on the road so much, because that's the best way to make a living. If you're lucky enough to have, made a name for yourself over the years. I don't really know how people are buying or listening or doing what, but I know it's, we're rolling in nickels.
God bless you guys. Yeah, I mean, the whole world has changed. I mean, it's the advent. I mean, I never thought dialing in, I remember thinking, I will never get a digital. I always want a CD. And now I would never. What would I do with another object in my?
Listen, I still listen to albums. I mean, my kids are fascinated by the turntable. They're like, "What is this strange machine?" But now that I've sort of played them stuff like The Last Waltz and other things on an actual album, I think they can hear the difference. I'm not sure, but anyway.
You were on, I just had Judy Collins on, I want to say a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Recently, Judy Collins was on, and not the new one, but the one before that, as I told her, just like a truckload of cats on there, and one of those cats is yourself.
One of those cats is me. Yeah, I was very honored to be asked to sing with Judy. She's one of my heroes and has become a friend over the last couple of years. But yeah, it's a great record with Willie Nelson and Michael McDonald and some really great singers. And the tune I did is not that old, but a not very well-known James Taylor song. And I think it's a really nice version of this tune called Belfast to Boston.
Yeah, I've heard it. And how did you get to know her?
That's a good question. How did I get to know her? I can't remember who introduced us. I was asked to play a show that sort of celebrated an anniversary of hers somewhere downtown in New York City. I think that's where we first met, although I'm not, I really don't know, but somehow we've become fast friends. We just had dinner together a couple of weeks ago in New York City. I can't remember, but grateful that we have.
Hey, no one may be buying records, but you just got a good life, dude. Have things like this working out.
Well, that's one of the best parts of my life, actually, is all the heroes that I had when I was young that are now my collaborators and friends. It's miraculous.
I was exploring a little bit of your history. Again, it's the great Marc Cohn spending some time with us here for All Things Considered. And one of your online bio at iTunes, speaking of digital stuff, one Sunday morning in the early 70s, a youngster in Cleveland caught an earful of Van Morrison's Astro Weeks, and his life was never to be the same. So I'm just wondering where you got this, if you can, just in your own words, paint how you can remember it hitting you and what has now become something that blesses you every day.
There was a lot of things that conspired to happen concurrently that I think made it so that I didn't really have a choice to do it, but what I'm doing. I had an older brother who's now since passed away, sadly, but he was an amazing piano player, and he practiced with his band in our basement. He was about 12 years older than me, maybe more. So I was a little kid, and he had a trio of all things as well, sort of a quote-unquote jazz trio. He could play anything. Dave Brubeck, Burt Bacharach, Motown, Ray Charles. And so there I was, this little kid, not just hearing music on the radio, but live in my own basement. And that was hugely influential. That combined with the fact that, I grew up when I think radio was amazing, especially on weekends. Oddly enough, there's a strange circular thing that's happened in my life. There was a DJ I used to call every weekend, Saturday morning, to ask him, what was that you just played? Because sometimes I would miss the intro, and it would be the whole side of a record, right? It would be Joni Mitchell or Jackson Browne, and that was the music I first fell in love with. That DJ is now my manager.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so something comes around.
What's his name?
David Spiro. He was a great DJ in Cleveland where we both grew up, and he's a bit older than me, but it's a new relationship, but it's fascinating. He was such a big part of what I ended up falling in love with, and now he's managing me.
I think that's a beautiful story, and gives some hope to radio people. There is another career. There's a real career waiting when this farcical thing wraps up. And the voice, you've got this, and when you hit it on that tune, it's a powerful, and I'm not blowing smoke. I'm the truth. It's, and you know that. As I was telling Martha, who works here, you just got to write one. Mm-hmm. You don't need, there's a lot of ways to do things. And there's a huge contribution to take people out of whatever painful place they're in, and you put that on, and boom, there's a couple minutes of stunning relief. And an aspect of the song is your voice. It's a warmth, something very, very nice about it. When did you discover, like, hey, I like this singing, or get the feedback from people saying, I like it when you do that?
I was standing at my middle school locker, as I recall, at about 13 or 14, and an upperclassman who since became a good friend of mine heard me singing Maggie May at my locker by Rod Stewart and said, my God, you have a fantastic voice. You want to be in my band? I was like, hell yeah. And that was the beginning, and I just I remember seeing Paul Newman being interviewed on 60 Minutes years ago, and somebody said, "How do you feel when people compliment your eyes?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know what to feel. I've always had them." And that's kind of the way it is with me and my voice. I didn't take lessons. I just always had it. So I'm grateful that I got given that for sure, and an ability to tell a story. But it's not something I've quote unquote worked on. I just came here with it.
That's a great story, though. That's a cool. You ever get to tell Rod that?
That Maggie May was the first thing. No, I've never met Rod Stewart. It's one of the few people I haven't met. But man, do I love his first couple of solo records. Just great.
He had a great voice. I remember being a little kid when Kiss had that song called "Hard Luck Woman," and I'm telling my mom, "That's Kiss, that's Kiss," because I had the record. My mom's like, "That's Rod Stewart." I'm like, because it's on the radio. I'm like, "Mom, it's on the record I have down." You know the tune I'm talking about.
I do, yeah.
Great song.
It is.
So you mentioned the storytelling, and it's really a, it's a song it can get you choked up. This song, "Walking in Memphis," it's been described as, I'm in the tribe too.
All right.
So it's been described as your experience as a Jew who feels the gospel spirit of Memphis, but it goes a lot deeper than that, and even you can credit James Taylor in some ways for the inspiration. I've spent some time reading about it today, and it's a transporting song, like many that can do that, sort of like aromatherapy or certain kinds of nostalgic triggers. Tell the story of coming up with that.
Well, I went to Memphis because, as you say, I had read this interview that James Taylor had done where he recommended to songwriters that were stuck for ideas to go someplace they'd never been, to sort of shake up their sensibilities. And one place I'd always wanted to go was Memphis. So much of the music I grew up loving, from gospel to Al Green to Ann Peebles, Elvis, Sun Records, all of that amazing, magical stuff came out of that one place. And so when I was about 25, I went down there and ended up having, I went there looking for inspiration, which is all the more unusual because usually when you're looking for it, you ain't going to find it. But I did. And I went to hear Al Green preach. I went to this little place called the Hollywood Cafe, which I talk about in the last verse, and I meet this Muriel Wilkins, yeah, who changed my life. She asked me up on stage to sing. There wasn't one song both of us knew, so she just started feeding me lyrics to old gospel songs. So I was singing "His Eyes on the Sparrow" and "Near My God to Thee," and all the big hits from my temple. I was completely out of my comfort zone. But at the end of singing "Amazing Grace" together, she said, "Child, I think you can go home and write the songs you've been meaning to write." Up until that point, I felt I hadn't really found my songwriting voice. I had my singing voice, but I didn't have my songwriting voice. And that to me was the key, because the people I grew up loving were great songwriters. And I went back home to New York, and I wrote that tune and a bunch of others that ended up on the first record within a couple of months. And she changed my life.
Did Muriel, how do you pronounce it?
Muriel Wilkins.
Muriel. Okay, so I'm saying it right. Did Muriel really ask you, "Tell me, are you a Christian child?"
No.
Okay, so it's just, it's cool though. I mean, that's what a song is about. It's like you take an event. It's kind of like a movie that's based on a true story.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you'd be lucky if you were given a line like that. I was given the experiences, and I, turn it into the song.
And that's one of the things about that. So you were telling her, it's something that I read about your conversations with her while you were there, and you were telling her how, and I'm quoting from you, how when I was 2.5 years old, my mom passed away very unexpectedly, and about 10 years later, my dad had passed away, and I'd been raised by a stepmother. My mother's death, I'm reading what Marc said here, was a central event in my life, and I'd been writing a lot about it over the years, both in songs and in journals. I think a part of me felt stuck in time, like I'd never quite been able to work through that loss. And I guess I ask this because I lost my mom May 6, 2013, and I'm still trying to figure things out from that. And so where are you today on this process, and can you share any helpful or poignant stories from that?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's this record you were talking about, Careful What You Dream, was interesting for me with respect to this subject you're bringing up now, because I realized how long I've been writing about that loss. These songs, which are 30 years old, like I told you, from Careful What You Dream, there were at least 5 or 6 songs that were basically about my mom and the day she died, or the feeling of loss about her passing. And of course, I was 2.5, so too young to really process it. But that loss has been with me ever since. I can feel it in the way I respond to even leaving town. When my little kids are saying goodbye to me and it's time for me to go on the road, I can tell when it has bigger implications for me than the actual thing that's happening in that moment. I know it's about my mom. When something feels like I can't quite articulate it, but I'm struggling, I'm in pain, I don't want to do something, I'm filled with stress and all kinds of stuff, I know that I'm still struggling with that loss. And luckily I've had songwriting to help me get through it. But it's pretty clear to me at 57 years old, I might have things that help me get through it, but there's no getting over it. It just is. And I've learned more and more to accept that. As sad as it is, it's my story. And luckily I've had songwriting, as I say, to try to help me process some of it.
That's powerful. Yeah, that's a hard, it's a hard thing to, especially, I was like 42, so it's just, and that's probably the thing about the song. It's like, I put that song on today, I'm like, I'm going to be talking to this guy tonight. I've heard the song my whole life, or, since 91 or whenever it came out. And, you put that on and immediately it's like, there you are, you're 21, and, mom, dad, house, the comfort, the security, all this stuff. And it's such a, and you're a real nice guy too. I mean, a lot of people make these songs and they're not that easy to, they're not nice. They're not easy to deal with, and they get a lot of songs, or they accumulate a lot of records and tours, and all this baggage and stuff comes in. But you get this kind of song that, it's just powerful. The minute you get chills, you hear that song, it takes you back to safer. You ended the show tonight with that sort of message. What was the last thing? Oh,
last song I played was called One Safe Place.
And that to me is when you hear Walking in Memphis, when you hear your voice, it kind of takes you to One Safe Place.
Well, that's good, man. That's what I've been trying to do with that song and with all of them. I mean, luckily I've had that experience of a hit, but basically, I go out on the road to not only sing to people, but to also kind of lobby for my body of work. I mean, I love that Walking in Memphis had that impact on you and on a lot of people. That's what you try to do. You try to get the song to do its work, for people. But I'm also out there touring to kind of play, 20 other tunes that people may not know that I think fit nicely alongside the quote-unquote hit. And a lot of these tunes seem to have found their place in people's lives, which I'm very grateful for. That's the best part of what I do.
I hope you don't take any offense in me. I mean, because it's a huge, I mean it in the most profoundly complimentary way, because it's the kind of song that there aren't a lot of tunes that do that, and the ones that do, it's just a special moment when you can give that person recognition, because it's transporting. It takes you to a safer place that you just can't. There's not every song can do that, and you must hear this from a lot of people.
It's great. I mean, in a way, that song doesn't even feel like mine anymore. It belongs to everybody else and all the people who've covered it. And yes, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have written something that seems to have resonated for people. But like I said, it just almost feels like it's not mine, which is lovely. One of my kids is doing fine on their own.
That's a huge, it becomes its own. It's like writing Happy Birthday or something like that. Have you ever, and it was because James Taylor had done a sort of trip to find inspiration that you did this trip? Have you ever, much like you never have gotten the chance yet, and I'm hoping that you do get to tell Rod, Rod, I'm standing by my locker and I'm singing, and have you ever gotten to tell James Taylor, this thing happened because of...
Not only that, I was lucky enough to actually have James sing a background part on that first record on a different song called Perfect Love. But yeah, absolutely. I've told him not only how he directly inspired my traveling down to Memphis, but what an enormous influence he's been on me over the years. I think he's one of the best that's ever been. But yeah, I not only got to tell him, but I got to have him sing on the record.
That's huge. Well, that's he must feel some sort of like a little extra pride knowing he helped, because he's got a whole body of things himself, but that he was able to inspire something that's just going to go on for generations.
I hope so. I mean, that would make me happy to know that James felt some sort of pride in that. He's as lovely as can be. So I think he does feel good. I remember hearing on Saturday Night Live years ago, right when that tune came out, my song, James did an old Chuck Berry song called Memphis. And if I'm not mistaken, at the fade out of the song, he started singing a piece of Walking in Memphis. And I just remember sitting there going, what? It was just incredible. So I think he is proud and feels a connection.
And he should, because that's something to really, that's just one of those, that's a nice thing to be part of some magic like that. And that's probably what a lot of people feel in the crowd when he plays. It's Marc Cohn, and Careful What You Dream, Lost Songs and Rarities, plus bonus CD, Evolution of a Record. What's that part about?
Those are the original demos of Walking in Memphis, like from the first time I ever recorded it at a piano, like 1984, where you hear the studio fish tank bubbling in the background, and then the evolution of adding a band piece by piece until we got into the studio to actually record it. It took a long time to turn that song into a record. Because it stops, it starts, it speeds up, it slows down. There's dead air for a few seconds, and boy, you got, it's a weird arrangement because I wasn't thinking about a band when I wrote it. I was just sitting there at my piano. So that's what Evolution of a Record is. That's part of the 2 CD set, is just the early demos of Memphis and a tune called True Companion and one or two other demos from that first record.
But you pointed out really well, the production of that is a part of, that's what makes one of these things so special. It's like you can just, like the reverb, the little delay in your voice in one spot, just the pauses. I could sit here praising you all day. Careful What You Dream, Lost Songs and Rarities, plus the bonus CD of Evolution of a Record. He is through Saturday at the Blue Note, and a very fun time getting to sit and pick the brain of Marc Cohn. I hope this was okay with you.
I had a great time. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.